Greetings, Princeps, and welcome to the 60th episode of the God Engine Cast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the Adeptus Titanicus wargame produced by Games Workshop. In this week's episode, we will be finishing up our conversation about the Legio Fortidus, the Dauntless, consisting of a in-depth hobby review with a collector of the Legion, and then my final thoughts about this fantastic Legio. So before we get stuck into today's show, I just want to throw a quick note out there saying that the next show I record will be focused on the Iron Halo GT's Titanicus event that I ran a couple of weeks ago now. I had a really good time running it, and I want to say a massive thanks to everyone who came out to play. Here in a few days, I'm going to sit down and record my thoughts about the event. Plus, I'm probably going to take some time to discuss recent Titanicus news that I've sort of been looking past in the last couple of episodes. But with all that said, let's just get down to business. A few months ago, I was contacted by Jem. He wanted me to cover the Dauntless on my podcast, which I did. And I reached out to him, asking him if he had a collection of the Dauntless and whether he wanted to be on the show to talk about his Legio. And he was very happy to do so. So we sat down and talked about the middle of August, I think, for a couple of hours about his Legio. We went off on some spectacularly wonderful tangents. And over the last couple of weeks, I've trimmed and edited down this conversation into a lovely discussion about the Legio, which I will cut to now. So let me welcome Jem to the show. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today, Jem. Before we get stuck into today's main topic, talking about Legio Fortidus. Oh god, it's gonna be one of those names again. The Dauntlesses. Let's start with the big conversation of when did you get into Titanicus?
Actually, I got into Titanicus back with the Grandmaster Edition.
Okay.
Right at the get go. So, just a little bit of my hobby background. I came in right around middle of 3rd edition and came into that pretty hard. With me and my brother both played quite a bit when I was younger. And I got into Gothic right at the tail end of Gothic, and it was my favorite game that Games Workshop came out with. Missed Epic entirely, missed Titanicus entirely, all of that stuff with where I was in the world, you know? So when I saw, I was always used to watch the games days and everything. When I saw that they were redoing Titanicus, I got so excited. I bought in hard. I bought a Grandmaster Edition, a couple little knights and everything. I painted up my Grandmaster Edition with an Ataris Warlord and a Furians Warlord, and decided I didn't like painting either of those schemes, and sat around with a whole bunch of gray plastic until Doom of Molech came out, and that's when I got into the Dauntless. Yeah, it's one of those names.
Yeah, I'm just going to call them the Dauntless from now on, because it's a pretty neat alternate name anyway. Cool.
Yep, it's one of those nice little Latin names that nobody seems to know how to pronounce.
It looks really good on paper.
It does.
So, I mean, outside of Titanicus, you still play much 40k?
I play a little bit. I've played 30k, not recently. 40k, I definitely am really interested with the kind of revamp of Kill Team, but we'll see where that goes if it takes off in the local area. I bought pretty heavy into Necromunda when it got its refresh, but since I bought in, I mean, in the States, it's not that popular, and I haven't found anyone who really cares to play, especially when I think Games Workshop came out with Kill Team shortly after Necromunda got its reboot, so everyone hopped on board with that, you know?
Yeah, I really like Necromunda. Like, it's a huge thing in the UK. I know it's a lot bigger over there than it is over here, but they did the release weird because they came out with that Shadow War Armageddon release.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it sort of was the origins of both New Necromunda and Kill Team. And I definitely feel the US went more Kill Team.
Oh, especially at the time I was in Hawaii, and I couldn't tell you if there was even another Necromunda player. Every time I'd go to buy the new set that came out, they were always still full on the shelves, like completely stocked out. I don't even think I ever found another Necromunda player out there.
Yeah. I know Oklahoma had a core group of players playing a pretty good Necromunda campaign, but there were maybe 5 of them, and there were definitely more Titanicus players out there, which isn't the normal for when you hear people talk about the scene in the United Kingdom. So.
Yeah. So as far as 40K goes, I have a Primaris army, I have a Chaos army, and I play those every now and again if that's what the group wants to play, but I'm never really looking for games of that too much anymore.
Whereabouts are you based?
So I'm about halfway between Maryland or between Baltimore and DC in Maryland. We got a pretty good group of guys that meets probably twice a week to play. We're slowly trying to expand that community because there is a lot. Every time we go up to a game store to play, I get 5 or 6 people to come up. Oh, I have a whole bunch of Titanicus stuff I've been meaning to play. Every time we play, I get that, and it's so. Right now, we're trying to expand the community, trying to get some of those people to come out of the woodworks and actually play some games. But we'll see how that pans out with I don't know, the new COVID stuff coming back and the Delta variant and everything. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was feeling really good about a month ago. Like I'd gone up to Oklahoma City and played in several game stores I hadn't been in some cases years, and I brought my Titanicus out, and I had a few people come out the woodwork. I didn't see anyone playing this game before, and got their names and got them into the community, which was nice. But yeah, I feel like we're about to backstep again.
Yeah, I think we're going to backstep pretty hard. Fortunately, the group that I'm with, we're all pretty good about things, and sometimes we'll meet at game stores, sometimes we'll meet at buddy's house and everything to play. So we'll still get games in, but it's yeah, that community building is going to be real hard if we take a step back. I know even in my area, I don't know how it is out there. There's still game stores that aren't having any gaming in the store itself.
It's very mixed.
Yeah.
I'm in the south, which is trying to ignore the occurrence of the Delta. So, like, we get some places where it's all very open and there's no masking and everything, which is scary. And then we get the other side of the coin as well. So.
Yep. That's about how we are too. I mean, I'm out in the suburbs, so you go down to the city, and it's all as harsh as you can be about the masking, as strict as you can be, and none of the game stores are playing inside. And you go 20 minutes out into the suburbs, and it's a little bit more lax. I don't think we have anywhere here that's not taking any precautions, but we definitely have a mixed bag of who's taking what.
I mean, we're fortunate here in the States that there is a community expectation that we're going to play a lot in each other's garages.
Yes, there is.
In the UK and most of Europe, you don't really have that luxury. A lot more of gaming is focused on the game stores, because that's on the gate and the sort of Boy Scout halls, because that's where you can have the space for the tables.
Yep.
Yeah. So just in case we have folks listening to this on the East Coast, what game stores do you particularly haunt?
So there's the Games Workshop in Columbia that we play at, Columbia, Maryland. There's a couple game stores on the north side of Baltimore that are open for gaming. I haven't been up there since the kind of COVID restrictions have lifted, so I don't really know what the scene is like up there. But I'm definitely, with where I'm located at and the few of us that play pretty heavily around here, we're all on the Maryland 30K group on Facebook, and we absolutely will give a little shout out to those guys. We'll definitely, couple of us are more than happy to drive 30, 40 minutes for a game if there's a local store that people want to go to. Here around Baltimore and DC, it's pretty congested, which is nice because, I mean, if you do have listeners that don't know of any Titanicus players, we're not really that far away,
So other than the Dauntless, do you have any other collections? Do you do Knights or anything?
Oh yeah, I take my inspiration from I forget his actual name, but it's Forge of Mars. I'm working on Mortis, Metallica. I got 12 engines still in their boxes that I'm probably going to paint up in Honorum. And yeah, I'm just kind of creating my own little forge out here.
Yeah. ready to give some engines to the community when they need some.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. Actually, what I was painting while I was kind of collecting some of my thoughts today was I'm working on a Regia maniple for Metallica. And man, it's such a cool scheme. I love it.
Oh, they really are. I've got to sit down and look at Metallica a lot more.
I haven't gotten any games with them, but I'm excited about their rules. But we'll see.
Now that Legio that I think's like I haven't really given much thought to because they appeared in the Loyalist book with all the material being sort of old. So I went to look at all the what would change, and I never really got stuck into really thinking about them as a new Legio. So.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I got quite a bit. I have a lot of knights. I don't really like playing them. I kind of made up my own little house for them that are kind of a dark blue and silver scheme. What I'm probably going to do is as I start finishing up some of these maniples I'm working on of other Titan legions, I'm going to build a knight small little banner of knights to go with each one. So like my Metallica ones will get a house Crast, and my Mortis will get probably I haven't even decided on them yet, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Knights are in a weird place in the game at the moment. I've talked about it at length, but it's just I don't know. There's something about them that doesn't quite feel perfect. So
Yeah, I think my only problem on them is that there's a chance for them to be really gamey if you really want to play that way, and I think that kind of off puts a lot of people because I feel like a lot of people kind of go towards Titanicus because it's not that kind of game, you know. I know in my group we have God, we probably played most of this year without even seeing any knights on the table, especially now that Loyalist Legion's book has the upgrades that you can take. Like nobody's taking knights, and then we got one guy that came in and started playing a little knight household list. So we've seen him more recently, but yeah, I think just generally speaking, I think that's kind of what off puts a lot of people. Is it's just there is that chance for it to be gamey. There's a chance for it to be kind of like, oh well, it's an army, but it doesn't really follow the regular rules for the army, you know?
yeah. I also think they're probably the least balanced part of Titanicus. They definitely were.
Certainly.
They definitely were an afterthought, and their new additions are, hey, look at this cool model we made, and we've made some rules.
Yep. Absolutely.
Not really, we've made some rules, and now here's the model, which sometimes Titanicus feels like the direction they went. So
I absolutely agree with that. I think the initial they were an afterthought, and I think that was okay. I think where they really kind of got out of hand was when they introduced the murder turtles. I think everyone calls them, yeah. Um, and I mean, I'm sure that I know you've covered it at length because I listen to your podcast all the time. I know everyone else has, so I won't get into that. But it's just they give me a weird vibe. I don't really like playing with them. I'm gonna build some up because I love the models. The
yeah.
Certainly the what is it? The Knight Lancer is one of my favorite models that Forge World ever produced. You know, so I love the models. I'm gonna paint them, but I just get a weird feeling on the tabletop about them.
Oh yeah, no, I've got my Night Household. I played it a few times. It's now sitting in my display case, and I'm very happy with it.
Yep. Yeah, that's how mine went.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So, I mean, we're here to talk today about the Dauntless. Let's get the name. This is obviously going to be the second part of my usual two-part coverage of the Legio. So we're going to sort of talk about your feelings of them. So before we actually get stuck into the rules, what do you think of their background and stuff? Because they've got one of the more interesting backgrounds of Titan Legios out there.
Actually, I kind of love it, honestly. So I really I got into the Legion because I love the color scheme and I wanted to paint something that wasn't one of the big, like well-known legions. You know, I didn't want to be one of every other Mortis player. Things like that. And nothing to lambast the Mortis players. I have my own Mortis Titans, but I just wanted something that was different that you wouldn't see on the tabletop too often. I love the orange scheme. And then when Loyalist Legions came out, they came out with a whole page and a half of fluff for them, and I love that even more.
Yeah, like I mean, the fluff was there in the previous books, but it really sort of drove home the point that this Legio is basically destroyed.
It's the remnants of a destroyed legion coming together, and I definitely touched on that with the models that I painted. Um, which is it's funny because I painted 11. I have 11 engines for the Dauntless by now, which is not a force you would expect from a Titan Legion that's um, been destroyed. However, the way I went about it is after about the fourth or fifth Titan that I painted, everyone after that has a different pattern on them. So
Okay.
when you get them all together, you can tell like, oh hey, they're from the same Titan Legion. Like they're obviously part of the same force. They have the same emblems and things like that. But they're clearly from different formations. And I love that you could touch into that. I haven't sadly this I haven't named a lot of my Titans, but I really do want to start digging into that as well because it sounds like just kind of reading through the fluff, a lot of their Titans were renamed to be like, oh well, this is kind of a screw you to the loyal or to the traders. I mean, which I love that. I love the idea of a Titan Legion having that kind of fighting spirit of just like, oh well, we're not going to go down quietly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like I've been putting it in my notes for the review, and I was like, "This is not the Legio I was expecting to read about," because obviously they've, as we're about to touch into the rules, they've got a reputation in the community.
Yep.
They were the go-to guys for a while because they had a couple of very overpowered rules, and then to sort of stumble onto what was actually a really different story to every other Legio I've read so far, it was really pleasant.
Yeah, I think kind of the only parallel legion to them would be maybe Honorum. The one of the Death Bolts being a Crusade Legion, they kind of had a similar story where a lot of their Titans were on Mars, got destroyed in the thing. But that's really the only other Titan Legion that you can point to and go, okay, well, I see a parallel there. And even then, it's not a perfect parallel because like the Dauntless were I kind of like that idea that there's like these small little keeps out there, out in the galaxy that all of a sudden they see the bat signal and they all come back and try and join together to fight the traitors.
Yeah, I like looking for parallels between Titanicus and the Horus Heresy novels, and obviously the Space Marine legions, because that's how we understand the heresy. And they definitely have a sort of Iron Hands feel to them.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Again, that whole fighting spirit of okay, well, we're not going to go quietly, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of that sort of parallel, like Iron Hands, sort of starts appearing in their rules as well, which I think we should probably start.
Yeah, yeah. I have the page up right now, and I have my notes. So yeah.
Well, let's get stuck in with their first Legio trait. They are a standard Legio with 4 traits. Children of Mars, which is an interesting one. I like it as a rule. Obviously, it allows them to ignore penalties for command checks and pass rerolls for knights. Do you get to use it much?
So the nights it hasn't come in handy. The on the passing or no, what is it? Ignoring the negative penalties has come up. I got a buddy that plays Magna, so it comes up quite a bit with him. Um, and I also, like I said earlier, I have my own Mortis group, and playing against them with forget what it is. It's the upgrade that they can take that basically does the same thing. Yeah, that it comes up in that all the time as well because I let my buddies play my Mortis. So it is interesting. It's a good one. I don't know that it's something that if with orders it's nice. It's nice to have it when especially say you're playing against Magna. That's the big one that's in my mind about it. So you're playing against somebody who has Magna Titans, and you really need to get that charge off. Well, that might save you, but it's not necessarily one of those like, oh, hey, this is the reason why you're taking the Legion. Being that I don't really play Knights too often, it hasn't really come up with those for me.
Yeah, that knight additional rule is a really odd one.
I could see scenarios where it'd be helpful, particularly when you're looking at one of I can't remember the maniple off the top of my head where you can use the knights to kind of shield your Titans for you. I could definitely see it coming up with that because I mean you're expecting to lose knights then. They're going to be taking damage, you're going to be losing knights, which means you're going to be rolling on the shaken table and your knights are already going to be close by to your Titan. But you also want to take that in order for it to really be helpful, you want to take like some kind of tactic like that is what you're aiming for. So not really my style of play, so it hasn't come up that much for me.
If you're looking for a really themey list where you don't run that many Titans to represent the fact there aren't that many Titans left in the Legio, it's a nice buff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's get on to the next trait, the one that was the Dauntless was infamous for, which is Lost Suns, where they're able to exchange one mandatory Titan for any of its mana pools with a Titan of scale 10 or lower.
Yeah, so I think this is the reason why most people are probably here. Yeah, it's interesting, and it got even better with the Loyalist Legions book. Because I think previously you could only swap out a Warlord Reaver or Warhound or a Warlord Reaver or Warhound, which doesn't sound immediately like a big change. However, when you have things where so one of the things that I really like to do is in smaller games, dropping a larger Titan to a smaller Titan. One of my favorite things in a 1200 point game or 1250 is what is it? The Ruptura Maniple, dropping one of the Warbringers down to another Reaver. So you have a Warbringer and two Reavers that you squeeze into a 1250 point list, which is really a lot of fun. But you have it's one of those things where it does add quite a bit more flexibility, or being able to drop a Warbringer in somewhere adds a lot of flexibility as well. I found Warbringers are really fun in the what's it called Corsair Maniple, because the Warbringers have a pretty far front arc movement but a really short side movement. So it's they get a whole lot of mileage out of the Corsair trait, which those were all things that you couldn't do before, Loyalist Legions, because you could only take either the Warhound, Warlord, or Reaver.
So, I mean, the big change we had with Lost Suns with the Loyalist book was they clarified that you didn't get to keep the previous traits, because Duma Molech version was you could swap out, say, a Warhound from a... It used to be you could swap out a Titan and keep that class of Titans as the special ability, so...
Yes, so they did that in Molech, but I started playing these guys right after Molech, and they really pretty fast dropped an FAQ that kind of made that change already. So they're really, and I know some people don't play with the FAQs, some people do. I've always played with the FAQs, so I really didn't really notice too big of a drawback from that, because, like I said, like shortly after Molech, they made that change.
Yeah, it was very... I think that's where they gained a lot of infamy, because obviously being able to swap them out all over the place.
Yes, being able to drop a Warlord and to change out with a Reaver in a what is it, a Venator Maniple is brutal, absolutely brutal. Things like that. They really did have a lot of gamey combos that probably turned a lot of people off to them. But like I said, I think the rules developers noticed that pretty fast and touched on it. God, it couldn't have been more than a couple months after Molech dropped it. They dropped that FAQ.
I must have talked about it, but I didn't notice it, so to speak. Now, the overall, I think it is one of the best traits out there, because it makes so many mana pools so variable, because it's what makes like so many of the good Legios good, like being able to swap out the Gryphonicus being able to swap out the any Titan for a Reaver is really nice, and this you can just be like, I'm just going to swap them for whatever I feel like.
Oh yeah, and it makes it's funny because it makes you could take the same 5 Titans and have it in 4 or 5 different mana pools depending on which Titans you take, and it's kind of nice for maybe some of those newer players that gets only a handful of Titans at a time. They can play multiple mana pools, get used to some of the rules, and also, oh hey, I have this pretty reasonably good Titan traits to go along with them.
Yeah, and you can talk about the variations of things you can do with that particular trait for a very long time.
Very long time.
Let's get on to the next sort of trait, which is their first stratagem, or the Red Planet. Let me just remind myself what this one does.
So that's the one that lets you ignore a critical damage for 1 round, which is a really, really underrated, I think, stratagem, considering that it's only 1 point. I personally haven't taken it a lot. I know I haven't seen a lot of people take it a lot, and that's why I say it's underrated. Just because, like, in my mind, the first time that I read through the rule, I thought to myself, well, if my Titan's already critically damaged, I don't want to be wasting stratagem points on it. But the more I play, the more I find, oh, hey, I really wish I could have made that charge, but my Reaver could only move half distance.
Yeah, it's a very interesting stratagem because it's 2 points actually. It's not a point, but
oh yeah, that one is 2 points. It's the other one that's 1 point. Sorry,
yeah,
my bad.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I don't know. It is probably really easy to pass over when you're picking your points because it's like, I can't use it until I've taken critical damage, but some of those latter points of critical damage get really bad.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, so it's not ignoring the actual critical damage itself. It's just ignoring the effect. Which again, like some of those things, like plasma leak. Yeah, it sucks, but you're gonna have to deal with that eventually. But being able to, again, the charge one, that one alone I've sat there a dozen times when I haven't taken that trait and thought to myself, man, I wish I had taken that stratagem so that I can make this charge.
Yeah, because too much damage to the head, too much damage to the legs, both of which stop you being able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's definitely a good one, but again, I think a lot of people's initial reaction is, that's a lot of stratagem points to be wasting on a Titan that's probably on its last leg anyway.
And I suspect it's one of those ones you will actually find it useful most games, because most games you're going to take critical damage.
You're going to take some sort of critical damage. Like I said, the reactor leak, I don't think many people. I mean, it might save you if because again, you can drop it. It goes until the beginning of the following game round, so it might save you from going into the orange or going into the red, going into the next game round, which may keep you alive a little bit longer. But I feel like the reactor leak, I wouldn't be doing it as much on. However, again, like head damage and leg damage, those make your Titan useless.
Yeah, and I suppose on the right Titan, there's an argument for allowing you to play it and then fire your shield reactors back up. You've had void shield failure.
That would be a hard one to play. You could do it, I imagine. Well, let me see.
So you could just pick the body at the start of the damage control phase and be like, I can either ignore the reactor leak or I'm going to be able to fix my shields. And then just do that for a turn.
Which might save you as well. So I guess when you're on your second pip, there's definitely a case to be made to ignore the damage to the body as well. Yeah, definitely. I mean, shields are great. I don't think I'd ever use that on something like a Warhound or a Reaver, just because you have so few servitor clades. But definitely, if you want to try and keep your Warlord alive, that might be the difference.
Yeah, especially if you think it's near the end of the game and you're like, well, it won't matter if my shields go down next turn. Yeah.
Yeah, you got that Titan that's on its last leg that's in your opponent's deployment zone. That could be the difference between you getting 5 points or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Very tactical, which is the trend so far with these traits. They're all about giving you a lot of options rather than directing you to play a certain way, which is an interesting thing.
Yes. And then we get to the last one, which is hilarious.
Red Skies. Yes. I've seen this one in action, and it is hilarious. So when your Titan explodes, which isn't something you want to happen, you can spend
not at all
one stratagem point to make it go up that little bit larger. Generally means the explosion is going to be bigger and stronger.
It's great when it works right. I think the downfall for this one, the big downfall for this one is I kind of wish stratagems worked like how I think they're called stratagems in regular 40K now. Yes. Where instead of picking ones before the game starts, you have a pool that you can choose from as you play the game. And I think this one would be absolutely brutal if stratagems worked that way.
Yeah, in 40K, you can just pick any stratagem that you have access to at any point.
Exactly. So this one would be one that, like, oh, hey, my warlord, my brawler warlord is out in the middle of their Titans and is about to go supernova. Let me make this hurt a little bit more. That would be amazing for that. But I it's so hard for me to make the decision to plan around a Titan dying.
There was another stratagem somewhere that means you can go up with a big explosion.
Yes, there is. I was actually going to talk about it. I think it's called what is it?
Go pull it up because
I think it's Only in Death.
I believe so, and it's the combo I was hit with when I last played.
Yes, it is. It is mean. So I think it is Only in Death. And essentially what it does is it forces you into either a magazine detonation or a catastrophic meltdown. And I think that one is a 2-point stratagem. So you end up spending 3 points to have a suicide bomber Titan. And it is on the right Titan, it's pretty mean. I mean, even on some of the smaller engines, I mean, you're thinking catastrophic meltdown. You got a catastrophic meltdown on a Warhound regularly would only be, low strength because of their scale.
Strength 8, but you're looking at strength 14s.
Yeah, you're looking at a Warhound exploding at the side with the strength of a Bellicosa, And even if you don't get that, if you get the magazine detonation, you're looking at easily a foot radius around the Warhound. Say you're on a Plasma Hound getting hit with plasma shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something you can plan around. It's just like I said before. It's hard for me to make that decision at the beginning of the game that, oh, hey, I want a Titan to die. Because obviously keeping your Titans on the field is the better solution.
Especially as Titans going up are so indiscriminate.
Yes, yes.
This is where the whole, oh my god, this is amazing starts falling apart. Because, yes, your Warhound's going to go up with a giant 2-foot danger zone, but it means it's going to be 2 feet away from all of your Titans.
Or even better if you play it on a War Master and you have, almost the entire board is getting hit by a supernova.
Yeah, it's just you don't. Yeah, it's fun. But it's not.
It's fun once. It's fun when it works. I could never see anyone taking this in a serious competitive setting, and I definitely could never see somebody taking it in a narrative setting where when you lose Titans, it means something.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the word competitive. It's not even competitive. It is any style of game where you're not wanting your Titans to explode.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a cultural. I mean, I know several other podcasts have talked about it recently. There's this weird place we sit in Titanicus where it's you kind of want your Titans to explode because it's fun. There's something about that.
Yeah, I've pulled it off once. I pulled it off with a Warlord one time, and it took down probably 2 of my opponent's Reavers and 1 of my own. And after that was when I decided, I don't know that I ever want to really do this one again. I'll do it once. Maybe if I do a real big game with somebody, I'll do it where I have the Titans to spare, just for fun. But like I said, you're right. It's not. Titanicus is not really built for competitive play, but even any sort of hey, I want my Titans to survive, you're going to immediately be turned off to this, and you really shouldn't even be looking at it. I do think, like I said though, if they were running, this one would really be a brutal stratagem though. If you could take stratagems like regular 40k. And if somebody runs I'd be really interested to hear if somebody runs their games like that, if they've ever taken this as a result of that. Because I think it almost feels like this stratagem was written with that in mind. Oh, hey, in my dying breath, I'm going to make you pay for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stratagems that really fall into that category in my mind.
Yeah.
Which is, I would love to play Titanicus that way.
I'd be interested to.
There are 76 stratagems that everyone has access to.
Oh yeah, it would be miserable.
It would reward the player who knew the deck, and I already think that stratagems reward the player who knows the options.
Yes,
substantially. So I've quite often played without them just to let my friends have a fairer game. Or I help pick their stratagems because yeah.
Yeah, we have definitely done both of those things in our group, and I think that 40k kind of suffers from that as well, where if you know what's in your deck, you're much better suited to the new guys. So I like the way Titanicus is set up. I'm just saying specifically for this one, and you're right. There is probably a handful that I could, not off the top of my head, but as I've been reading through the books, I'm like, I think that was written by somebody who had a different idea in mind. And this is definitely one of those.
Yeah, in 40k, or at least in 9th edition, with it, once you get the 9th edition codex and you look at their stratagems, they have, 14 stratagems per army that are viable. It's a much smaller list. And yeah, I'd be all about playing a sort of pick your own stratagem if you could get the deck down to like 15 or so stratagems.
Yeah, that might be something that I might look into. Maybe doing a test out with a handful, maybe using only the ones from the core books plus your Legion stratagems or something along those lines.
Okay, well, getting back to the Legio,
Yeah.
finally we've got their personal traits.
Oh, this is actually one of the just kind of going into them. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. One of my favorite things about this Legion is one of the traits on here. So,
Okay.
I guess we'll go into the first one.
Yeah, broken by treachery, which, dude.
This one's a good one. So, what it does is it's a very good one. It lets you reroll. Well, rerolls are hard to come by. So anytime you have rerolls, it's a good thing. I love it. Not an automatic go-to for me, but it's definitely better than most of the basic traits, I would say. Let's see, just to run through it. Scale equal to or greater than the Princeps Titan, you get reroll to hit dice. Awesome on a Warhound. Oh my god, especially when you're running Plasma Hounds and you're worried about missing, and you gotta get that hit with the or even if you roll 2 1s, absolutely great on that. I think heavier mana pools probably are going to want to steer clear of it. Just because you throw it on your warlord, the chance that you're going to find another warlord that you're lining up on and you really want to get that reroll on, is it going to happen? Sure. Is it going to happen every game? No.
Okay, what about the Immortal of Mars? It seems like the dud one on the list, to my opinion. Like, lowering critical damage on one location doesn't seem to do much for me.
Yeah, the problem is your head is probably the thing that's going to take the least amount of hit, just because it has the low probability, and when aiming, it has the highest armor out of every Titan. I find myself never really taking it, honestly. The scenario I think where it's justifiable is when you have something like maybe MIU Link. It's a stratagem, and you're wanting to protect the head. That one might be relevant for that, but outside of that, I can't think of a time that I've ever wanted to take it.
I'm now just running off to look at MIU Link for a second.
Oh, sorry, that's the one where you get it forces it lets your Titans pick the I think it's either 1 or 2 points, I can't remember. But you essentially get to use the other Titan's range for drawing when you decide on your range bonuses.
Oh yeah,
so,
I see it there. It's that 1 point stratagem.
Yep. But the second you take critical damage to the head, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts both Titans. So that's one of those ones where that might be a justifiable place for that. But aside from that, I really, again, like I don't think I've ever looked at that one and been like, oh yeah, I want to take that.
The first level of MIU of damage to the head isn't that problematic anyway, so
No, not particularly.
like, -2 modifier to your command checks, which you don't suffer anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's the thing, is the way the rules written. I think that's something that Games Workshop needs FAQ, because I think they didn't intend for damage to affect that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
I think that was only supposed to be area effects and effects from other Titans. So it'll come into play. That one, that first rule, the Children of Mars, will definitely come into play with how I think the the corrupted Titans are going to work. But I don't think the intention is for damage to fall under that. Maybe that's something that Games Workshop needs to FAQ, but I've never played it that way.
No, I think you're right there. I hadn't even considered that until I started thinking about damage. I forget MIU feedback all the time for minusing my command checks. It's like my biggest weakness when I'm playing Titanicus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so the final one is Soldier of the Crusade, which I think is the one you were talking about earlier. It seems
Yep, this is the one I
good.
love. It's
Yes.
really good. I think there has been times. So if I'm running a single maniple, I probably will pick either the Broken by Treachery or pick another one of the traits from the main book. But if I'm running two maniples, which is quite often, I mean, at 1700 or 2500 games, I always run two maniples because I can squeeze them in with being able to take smaller titans and stuff. I always do Soldier of the Crusade on one of those maniples. Because that extra stratagem point, oh my god, you can get so much mileage out of it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Plus one stratagem is just pick your bonus. Because there's a lot of things you can do with one stratagem point that will affect more than just the Princeps.
You could even take red skies for it and hope for that titan to die.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think one of the things that a lot of people don't, or at least I didn't think about initially, is running two legions. So your opponent gets a bonus if you run two legion traits. Well, you just mitigated that bonus by taking Soldier of the Crusade.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a huge deal because now it's no longer, oh hey, I've picked my bonus. It's I picked a whole nother legion trait for free. And that is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, I'll talk about this in the previous episode, but it combined with Lost Suns is where you get into the realm of crazy complexity.
Yes.
Two minimum size maniples. You can pick the maniple you want. You can pick whatever titans you want those maniples to be made out of because you want. They're all going to be mandatory titans, so they all can be switched.
Well, so only one from each. There is a limitation to that. It's not like the Gryphonicus trait where you can take all of your titans and make them one. Yeah.
So you get to pick two maniples. Each of those maniples you can swap a titan out. Both of those Princeps Senioris in both those maniples can take the Soldier of the Crusade. So you get two additional stratagem points, which allows you to play some pretty big upgrades on your titans.
Oh, huge upgrades.
And you can pick that at the start of every game. It's just so flexible.
It really is, and I've noticed with this, it becomes even more. It rewards the players that want to play with smaller titans. And the reason why, so like I was saying earlier, like I like to take a Ruptura maniple with only one Warbringer and swap out for an extra Reaver. I'm getting rewarded by that because now I have 100 more points to play with. So it's not uncommon for me to bring, that maniple, a minimum maniple of that with two Reavers and a Warbringer, and then bring a Ferrix maniple that's three Warhounds.
Gosh, yes.
I have no warlords on the table, but I have a really fast, really maneuverable army that probably has more activations than whoever I'm going to be playing.
Yeah, and you've got two more stratagem points and
Yep. It really does start to reward you the more you try and play into that flexibility.
yeah, it is. It's a Legio like no other because it's really easy to make a pretty powerful Legio Incarnum list or make the knock the resilience through the roof of Legio Storm or something.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. I think the Fire Wasps less so, but I think most legions kind of have a theme going for them when you go to them, and it may not necessarily be that theme forces you one way, but it definitely suggests one way. So like a Storm's a perfect example of that. A Storm definitely has a theme about them. They definitely have titans that they favor. I think with Fortidus, their theme is flexibility, which is an amazing thing to have a theme for. And again, it really is a good Titan Legion for a beginner player who just wants to put some Titans on the field and doesn't even know anything about what the maniples they're building. Because now because I can make the same three Titans into 7 different maniples,
Yeah, I mean, just following that on, we'll just divert away from such my plan and just talk about the sort of hobbying side of things. They aren't a difficult Legio to paint, or at least paint.
Oh no, not at all. I can usually knock out a Warhound in about 2 evenings.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to paint them, I looks like I'd do a full assemble, spray everything silver, bust out the contrast red over it for the metallic red they've got going on, and then highlight with a bit of white.
So there's a bit of disagreement amongst some of the, and I found some other Fortidus players amongst Reddit and things like that. Whether it's red or orange, I definitely lean towards the orange. And my orange that I go for is a bit darker, but it's basically exactly what you just described. I bust everything out in silver, highlight up the silver, shade it and everything, and then I hit it with a candy coat of of orange, so it becomes a metallic orange. And then I go through and do all my white on top of it, which again, that's the whole reason why I got into them in the first place. Was I like orange and white, it makes me think of creamsicles, and I thought it was cool. Yeah, so it's a really really easy Legion to paint. I've seen people go for the red scheme, and it looks good with red and white. It looks good with the orange and white. It's easy, and you have just like what I was saying when I was talking about kind of their lore and everything. The lore kind of gives you the flexibility to run with it as well on how you want to play your Titans. Like I paint all of mine. Shit, I have them all sitting in front of me right now. I have 4 different Warhounds, and all 4 of them look like they came from a different battle group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the color plates in the Loyalist book, and I definitely see the argument for it being orange because those shield plates on the Warlord are red, and you can tell the difference when you.
Yes.
It's a very reddish orange, so you've got
it is
plenty of spectrum to run around with.
Mm-hmm. I've seen one a guy on Reddit that I saw, and I was chatting with him a bit about it as well. This was a couple months ago. He likes to go through and do a little bit of red under, do a really thin candy coat of red under his candy coat of orange. So his orange ends up being a reddish orange like that, and it looks amazing. You got a lot of room to play with, and doing that metallic with the varnish over top is so easy to do.
It's definitely a scheme that can be taken to a really high level. Like there's plenty of space in there to become artistically interesting with it, but you can do very simple jobs and get Titans on the table that folk will recognize.
Yes, absolutely. One thing, their emblem is kind of the skull with the crest on it. That's another easy thing. Every Titan that you buy comes with Mortis transfers. Shave down half of the Mortis transfer, and you have a Dauntless transfer.
Yeah, they are very close to it. I'm actually just going to do a quick visual check and look at the Mortis logo because I'm now interesting.
Yeah, so what I do is it has kind of the gate behind it. I shave the transfer down for the gate, so it just has the crest connected to the skull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. They are.
You know, when you get close up, you're like, oh, well, it doesn't have the helmet and everything, but from the tabletop, it looks exactly like it.
Already to mention the list you sort of run. Do you have any other versions of the Legio you put out there?
Oh, man, I could go on and on. Like you were saying, huh?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, given the style of Legio, the answer is lots, but...
Oh, yeah, flexibility. I mean, and for me, I have, like I was saying earlier, I have 11 Titans from them. One of them's a Warlord. I have a handful of Reavers, a Warbringer, a handful of Warhounds, and then I have a War Master, which has only seen the table once and died gloriously to a handful of Knights. But for the others, like, oh yeah, I love going in and just building out lists and just trying to think of different combos that would work, different interesting things.
I mean, I suppose in a way, this isn't a Legio that the War Master doesn't make a great addition to this Legio.
No, not at all. He's survivable enough that he doesn't really benefit from many of the things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the only time that would be funny would be if you wanted to go for the Suicide War Master with the Red Skies trait, which would be hilarious if you did it, but that's a lot of points to sink into a Titan that you're expecting to die.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would be hilarious if you pulled it off, because, I mean, God, we're talking something like 14, 15, or no, well over, something like 3 feet of a, destruction zone.
Yeah.
But not something that I think anyone's ever going to seriously consider doing. Sorry, maybe when we start to see the close combat one come out, you might see a few more of them, because I think So I like to play very aggressively. I have two close combat reavers that I play pretty often, as well as my warlord is a close combat warlord. And I think I lean into that just because I play with a lot of smaller titans that are really fast, so I can get in your face easier. I think this legion, like I was saying earlier, I think this legion really benefits when you play smaller titans. Smaller titans benefit when you play aggressively. So I think when you see the close combat one, you're going to see some Dauntless players go, "Oh, that would be cool. I might get one of those." But I don't think you're going to see many Dauntless War Masters out on the table.
Yeah, I've got a short list for Legios. I think work really well for the War Master. Legio Arturus, the one you mentioned earlier, I think is up there.
Oh yeah, they have some cool rules for the War Master.
Yeah.
Volpa would be funny as well. Throwing on smash attacks that hit harder than a Bellicosa would be just so funny. Just running
Yeah,
around curb stomping warhounds.
Yeah, basically, anytime you get a trait that buffs a Titan, the War Master likes it. If it
Yep,
buffs a
yep.
battle group, it's not as good.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. I do think while we're on some of the kind of experiences that I have, I will say one of the things that's really fun for me, I think I kind of touched on it briefly, was the smaller games, being able to squeeze in heavier titans into smaller games has been immensely fun. I know a lot of people talk about like doing the shenanigans of throwing a warlord into a Ferrex maniple, and I think that's a little overplayed because Ferrex, it's a great trait and it benefits everything, but the warlord isn't a good titan for it. There's a reason why it wasn't built that way. I definitely think there's a case to be made for being able to drop a warlord into a really small maniple, benefiting from whatever maniple trait you're taking while having a whole bunch of warhounds, basically running a mandatum, however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like basically running something like that, but with a different Legion trait. Let's take three Warhounds
Yes.
and a Warlord in a 1250 point game and still get the Axiom bonus. I think that's something that it's really fun to do. Really fun to be able to play with some of those much heavier maniple rules
Yeah,
at
definitely.
smaller games.
So, I mean, that, I suppose, is a sort of segue question, but one I didn't sort of cover earlier. What's the typical size game you guys are playing out in your area?
Oh man. So I like smaller games. My group likes bigger games. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. We have played everything from 1250 all the way up to a multi player. I think we did 6 players one time and each of us brought 1500 points. So that's what would that be? 4500 points per side. That was a slugfest of a game.
Mm-hmm.
It has definitely led me to agree with a lot of the community sentiment that this game was not made for larger games.
Mm-hmm.
Because the rules really do, right around 2500, the rules start to break down, I think.
I really enjoy 2,500 point games. Upper size Epic Clash are really good fun.
Oh, they are a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that happen in those games. A lot of explosions. They are really fun. I do think going above that, you're really starting to tread into territory that, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, when you have like, so again, I only have one warlord, and I think this is something that you're going to see a lot when you get to big games. So you have that one guy, your opponent knows that that one Titan is like your favorite one, such a morale boost to have, or morale drop to have like, oh hey, I'm going to focus 3,000 points of Titans on this one Titan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the rules start to break down, the morale starts to break down. You start to get into that territory of things that aren't fun, and
Yeah.
games that aren't fun, people don't want to play. That's not how you build community.
Yeah.
My favorite list is a 1750. I think that's probably a good list. I really like the range in between 1500 and 2000. I've played a lot of really fun, very technical 2000 point games. I've played a lot of very technical 1700. I think the smaller you get, the game does get really interesting at 1250 when, at that point, every Titan really does count. When you lose a Titan, it hurts a lot more than at a 2,500 point game where, oh, hey, well, I lost that Reaver, I have 5 more. Whereas at 1,200, oh, hey, I lost my Reaver, what do I do now?
Yeah. The advantage of 1250 games is they're fairly quick as well.
Oh, really quick. And that is that's nice for. So if we were gonna play at like our buddy's house or something, probably do a 1750 to 200 or 2000. I think playing at the store, 1250 is a fun thing to kind of generate some interest because you can go to the store and get 2 or 3 games in an afternoon at 1250.
Okay, so before we finish up, do you have any other random thoughts and stuff you want to touch on that we haven't?
No, I think I've covered most of the notes that I have. Especially about the Legion in general. Definitely, like I said, I definitely think it's anyone who doesn't really know what Legion they want to do, but they know they want to collect Titanicus. I think this is the one. Might be one to look at. You're not going to see them too often. They're easy to paint and they're really flexible to play with.
Yeah, definitely. I really like them. I think they're also the Legio I would sort of point at if someone wanted to reskin a Legio. Like, I want to play a Legio that's not, and you don't want to do the custom Legio, you just want to take a standard set of Legio traits, but want to play something unique. I think they work really well for it.
I think they work well for that. I think the only other one that I might point to for that might be Gryphonicus, just because they also kind of have a pretty... They're really good, one, but two, they also kind of have... Being able to swap out all of your Titans for Reavers adds a lot of interesting combos. So they're another one of those ones that I would point to and be like, yeah, both of those. This one, if you wanted to be, say, Legio Victorum, who doesn't have any rules, but you really love their scheme, well, yeah, play them as Dauntless.
Yeah, because there are plenty of Legios out there that are have had the same story of the Dauntless. The last remaining Titans of a noble house have been destroyed. Like, there you go.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anyway, man, it was great sitting down and talking to you for the last hour and a half.
Yeah, this is a great conversation, and it was real fun.
Once again, a massive thanks to Jem for coming on the show and sitting down and talking to me about the Dauntless. They really are a fun little Legio. I think my opinion of them has changed substantially since I started digging into them. I know a couple of weeks ago, the Maximal Fire podcast put out a tier listing of where they thought Titan Legios sat in relative power within the game. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed about where they placed the Dauntless. I really think this particular Legio is an incredibly versatile force, and I think my conversation with Jem there proved that they've got some really good tactics up their sleeves. And they're definitely a Legio I would encourage anyone to look at if they're looking for something new to collect. But with that, I think we're going to bring the show to a close. I'm not going to drag this section on and on. I'm going to get on and start trying to put together my thoughts for the Iron Halo and the recent news. I probably should discuss what I think of those Corrupted Titan rules. They look really interesting. So I'll be back in a few days with a long conversation about the Iron Halo and the ability to vomit onto enemy Titans. It's all very interesting, really. But until then, I wish you all well and good fortune. Thank you again for listening to another episode of the God Engine Cast, a podcast dedicated to discussing the Adeptus Titanicus game produced by Games Workshop. This show was written, recorded, and edited by Martin Emery. This podcast is completely unofficial and in no way endorsed by Games Workshop Limited. No challenge to any trademarks or copyrights have been intended. All rights are reserved by the respective owners. If you have any questions of the show, please email me at god.engine.cast@gmail.com or reach out to me through Twitter or Facebook. So until next time, I wish you all good fortune.